Welcome to the Dropping into Power podcast, where we'll be hearing stories about the transformational power of surfing from women surfers of all ages, all levels, and all over. We'll hear about courage, commitment, struggles, frustration, epiphany, and, of course, life transformations large and small. I'm your host, Sheila Gallion, and I am stoked to share these conversations with these amazing women full of so much passion with all of you. Aloha, and thank you so much for joining us on the Dropping into Power podcast. I'm so excited today to be talking to surfer Stacey Mack. Stacey, I don't even know your last name. You're just surfer Stacey Mack.
M-A-C, yeah.
And I first met Stacey when she reached out to me after I interviewed the Curvy Surfer Girl, Elizabeth Sneed. And she said, "Hey, I'm the Curvy Surfer Girl of Stand Up." And she has a great story. So first and foremost, Stacey started surfing. Was it 42 or 43? I've seen two different pieces.
Yeah, I think 42, I stepped on a stand-up paddleboard.
Got it.
By 43, I was on the stand-up paddleboard in the waves.
Okay. So nonetheless, 42 gets the call, starts on the stand-up paddleboard, and rockets into a completely new life. Like all of us are transformed by surfing, but Stacey's is pretty extreme. So to start with, she became pro really fast. And even to the point where they created a category for her. They didn't even have one in the Eastern Conference, and created a category for her where she took first in open men's and women's SUP. She has multiple first place wins and championships over the years. She competed in New England, throughout the East and Central America. She's been an ambassador for brands and sponsorships of some really beautiful companies. And then she became a certified SUP instructor to basically spread the stoke. And all of this comes on the heels, which we'll talk a little bit about, of her already well-cultivated adrenaline junkie self. But nonetheless, this incredible soaring explosion into a completely different world, the competitive world. You're the first person I've talked to that entered as a competitive athlete in your 40s as a mom. We'll talk about that in a minute. And now you live pretty much full-time in Costa Rica. Is that right?
Yes, correct. I'm in Costa Rica full-time.
And do you teach both in Costa Rica and in San Diego sometimes too?
I've been asked, people know me in the industry. So I was asked to work it was actually LA in the Los Angeles area.
Okay.
And I was in, Marina del Rey, Venice, that area.
Well, Stacey's whole story, your whole story is just about, I'm not supposed to be able to do this. This isn't supposed to be happening. And it happens. And it happens through the passion, through the love, through will. And so I want to start with what we were talking about just before, because one of my questions for you was, what did your kids think when you got into the ocean? So we're going to start. Tell me how old your kids were and what they said to you when you started.
Wow. I would say mid-teens or so. And I was so excited to have two boys because I was an athlete my whole life and I couldn't wait to coach them, teach them. I was, the first girl on the baseball team in my town ever in the 70s. So I was like, yay, I'm having boys. But my boys were so embarrassed when I used to put I'm in Boston. Not many people have surfboards up on top of their car. And I would be, stand-up paddle surf or surfboards up on top of my car, picking them up from school. They're like, "Mom, please don't bring the boards on the car when you pick us up." And then all the friends would say, "Oh, your mom's the coolest mom." But they had no idea. They could care less.
That's so funny. Yeah, you have to deal with teen peer pressure, even as you pursue your own dream. And then they said, they told you didn't belong in the water, or just as a species.
Gosh.
Yeah.
They taught me a lot about sharks, but they said, "Mom, did you know bull sharks can go in the fresh water and salt water, and they can go in a little amount of water?" So he's like, basically tell me, "Mom, we don't belong in the ocean. I said, I'm just visiting. Don't worry, I'm just visiting, you know?
It's so funny. I love that the teens are the ones telling them instead of you telling them, don't drive fast. Don't do
Oh,
this. They're like, Mom, stay away from the sharks, please.
exactly.
It's
So
so
cute.
funny. So, I don't know anyone else that started surfing. I'm sure there are not a ton of surfers on the Boston scene. So I really wanted you to paint the picture of what that scene is like and what it's like surfing around that area.
Wow, I love that question. You have to be diehard. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how we get to where we are. Because if you want to do it, no, you're not just going out weekend warrior. If you want to surf in New England, you have to chase storms, hurricanes, to get good waves. In the summer when I used to go to the beach and I would look at the ocean. In the summer we don't get waves, so it's flat as a lake. And I would never thought there was surfing in New England. I mean, I knew. I loved surfing, but my dad said to me, you know the stories. My dad said to me, "Why aren't you surfing, Stacey?" I was 42 years old. "Why aren't you surfing?" And I was like, "Dad, there's no surfing in Boston." He's like, "Yes, there is. I used to surf when I was a kid." It's because you have to go in the fall, or you have to wear a wetsuit, or you have to chase the waves up and down the coast. I mean, we were diehard. It was nonstop. Okay, let's get up 4 a.m. and let's take a drive up and down the coast, checking where the best waves were. I learned how to read surf reports really well after a while.
So do you read the full buoy reports, weather reports, not just
Yeah.
relying on Surfline or anything? So, okay. So what's it look like when you are in the thirst? Like what would your day look like when it was like time to catch some waves?
Oh, so what we would do, you obviously have to have everything ready to go. And we would all meet up and kind of carpool it, because if it was a south swell, it might be better in Rhode Island versus if it was, coming from the east, we would go up to Maine. So really every single break is different. The winds were different. So we might even head down to Rhode Island on a day, and in the day, and it was like an all day thing sometimes, or it was a couple hours trying to find the right break. So
you're crossing states, first of all, very foreign to people in the West, who are like, what? You're going into like 3 different states?
Well, you know how that might be too, is like also it's tough, like, because you have the New England area is not very territorial, but if you cross borders and lines, then it might become a little territorial, like where they'd see out of state plates and be like, what are you doing here? Because California, and anybody listening to this who's a surfer might know California, is there's certain areas where there's locals that are local to that break. And where we were in Boston, we had the option to go from Maine up down to Rhode Island. I mean, that's a long stretch. We would drive 2 hours sometimes to get to a break. So right in Boston City, we didn't have it, but we had it on the South Shore, the North Shore, and then spread it out against, the touching states. New Hampshire had some good waves too. And this is one little section of New Hampshire that touches the ocean. So yeah, then some of the areas, and I won't say who, but they didn't like the Massachusetts plates coming in. That's how our day was sometimes.
And so what kind of surf, how big, small? I mean, I'm sure like anywhere it changes with the conditions, but what were the most common conditions and what were like the ones you were hungry for?
I love that question, because I look back at, what are my favorite waves back in my whole, like 12 years of surfing, 14 years of surfing. It was what I would love. No, funny thing is, you're asking a question about what one person's favorite wave is, but another person's might be different.
Sure.
I used to say to people like, oh, I was on this big wave, 8-foot wave, 10-foot wave. And they're like, oh, that's not big.
Right.
That will always be big to me. But
yes.
I gauged what my favorite wave is in a hurricane in the Northeast. And I like the Northeast hurricanes because there was one swell coming in, which didn't interact with any other swells. I mean, not all the time, but a lot of time it was one clean swell coming in. And my favorite back in the day was about six or so feet, because this was more customary. Like we didn't have a lot more than the 6-foot wave. So I was like, this was my favorite 6-foot wave, about 380 in the velocity. And we were not fortunate to have a lot of seconds between the waves. So I would we might have up to 14, and I'm saying like that's rare. Like, so a 12-second between the sets. And then now my wave selection now down in Costa Rica obviously is different than that. I like 18 seconds between the wave, or 16 there. That's about what it was. So we would get, nice, good swells coming in. And my favorite month is October. And I happen to be going up there soon. So my friends up there like, bring your wetsuit. And being in Costa Rica, we don't wear wetsuits. So like when I get up there, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be back in Costa Rica in a week. Like, I don't even feel like putting on my wetsuit, which is one of the, so I getting lazy. Hello.
I know. I hear you. I'm so lazy leaving Hawaii. It's like, I don't know. That's cold. But that's so interesting. And it just sounds so exotic to be chasing hurricanes. And, I love the knowledge base you have of the interval. I love to nerd out on that stuff. In fact, man, I just met somebody the other day that told me about, I think it was called Surf Weather. I have to ask him again what it was, but it's like the total nerd site. So, it doesn't have everything all drawn out. I'll ask him. I'll send it to you. I was wondering what sites you use to assess.
I'd be curious what they use, because I teach it, and I actually teach it for surf camps. It's called, my class is How to Read Surf Reports.
Oh,
and
awesome.
the one I love is surf-forecast.com. And how I happened upon it is I was a snowboarder. So like they had snow dash forecast. And then when I started surfing, I happened upon it, and I love it. Like you said, it's not like fancy smancy, like you go on to an app, but it's great knowledge, in-depth knowledge, what I like.
I think that might have been it. That might have been what he was talking about.
Probably. Yeah. Wow. If he was, because I haven't met anybody else that uses it, but I teach it in my classes, and when I do, they love it, because you can transfer any of the knowledge you learn in it over to Magic Seaweed or Surfline. And I like the advanced categories in it. It's like advanced forecast, and then you can find like local breaks to go to if that one's not firing.
That's cool. Wow. Great tip. Hot tip for anybody listening. And I highly encourage people, if you're just starting out, whatever, you've been surfing a long time, studying how waves work and studying the intervals and the directions and all of that. It also really connects you to your place, your sense of place. So you can I've only just started to really dial in here. I've been so spoiled because I just surf whatever windows I have. So it doesn't matter. It's like, okay, I have this much time, whatever's there is there.
That's tough.
But, when I first started surfing in Humboldt County, it was before Surfline, really. And so we would do buoyweather.com. And there was no charge then, but you had to read the buoys and you had to read the directions. Otherwise, you would drive an hour and hike down a cliff and the waves would be 20 feet, or there would be nothing. Like you really did have to.
the wrong tide.
Oh, yeah. The scary, right? And Costa Rica has huge tidal shift. Is it 10 feet? Is the swing?
Yeah, minimum. We're at about that right here. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that is something. So we don't have that in Hawaii, that there's other issues, but in Humboldt, it's 8 feet. So here it's about 2.5 feet. We only have a swing of on the biggest swings are 2.5. A lot of times it's only a foot or a foot and a half. But remember, it's all exposed reef on the island of Hawaii. Like it's just rock, reef, urchins, so low tide is a very big deal, that foot of water. But what happens, when you have a dropping tide and a rising swell, as anyone who's ever been in that understands, and suddenly the wave doubles in size and you're like,
and there's no water on the bottom.
And there's the whole thing sucks out, and you're like, it doesn't, and it looks so different because literally you just lost 8 feet of water,
Wow.
crazy. So anyways, that's super cool. I could obviously geek out on that for a long time, but I really love it. I mean, I remember being so blown away when I learned that like a 2-foot wave at 18 seconds with a certain kind of bottom can be 15 feet.
Exactly, with the wind too.
Yeah. So there's a lot to learn in that. So, all right. That was fun. So we talked a little bit, kind of going back to the, curvy surfer girl part. And I remember you saying, we kind of just touched on it. And I want to come back to this at the very end when you talk about why you're actually getting focused on longboarding now, because that was a very interesting part of your story. But Was it easier for you to SUP than longboard? Is that one reason that you got involved there, feeling like it was just hard to get up or that your body didn't
It's
fit?
it's so wild because if no matter what I want to do in life, I end up doing it, you know? So what happened is I went up to when my dad said at 42, you know, why aren't you surfing, Stacey? What are you doing snowboarding, paying all that money to go up snowboarding? I said to myself, yeah, why am I not? So I went up to New Hampshire and I went and tried longboard surfing for the first time, like I said, at 42. And when I tried it, I am bigger. I am over 200 pounds. So to pop up, and I've always been for the longest time, even when I was younger in high school, I was like 180 something. So I played sports. I was always used to carrying that weight. I had a lot of muscle. So I was able to pop up, but not quite fast. And I would get knocked off really quick. And I'm like, I'm going to master this. But when I saw somebody when I returned to Boston, I saw somebody in the ocean on a stand-up paddleboard. And I was like, oh, what are they doing standing up on a surfboard? And I Googled it and found out it was stand-up paddleboarding, which is in like what? At that time, 2011, maybe 2010, I saw it first. So I said to myself, what is that? And when I Googled it, it said you could surf on them. So I didn't really correlate really the fact of, you know, I didn't say to myself, oh, just try that because I don't have to pop up. But when I tried it, then I realized, oh, I can do this, you know, and I didn't go back to the longboarding.
Right.
I just went full force with the stand-up paddleboarding, surfing, stand-up paddle surfing. And I think now I kind of regret not incorporating both of them at the same time because I ended up teaching longboard surfing right away. I mean, I was with longboard surfers the whole time. I mean, that's what shortboarders, longboarders, I used to get in the lineup with everybody. So I knew how to take a wave. I knew how to teach it. I got ESA certified, and then I got certified to judge all levels. So I regret not doing it now. I don't regret it, but now I'm like starting to longboard surf, which is posing a challenge for me. And back in the day, I loved a challenge. I think that's where I am in my life. I'm like, do I want a challenge? But I really do want to do all, you know, like a water woman wants to do all different things. And
totally.
so that's what I'm working on now, which is proving difficult as an overweight woman trying to longboard surf. There are key things that you need to do. I mean, you can't get on the same size longboard as another person. Like an 8-foot board to me is like riding a shortboard. Like, I mean, so I can sink that. So I'm on a 9-foot now, and I'm playing with different sizes and stuff like that.
How tall are you? Can I ask?
5'6".
5'6", yeah.
5'6". Yeah.
I mean, you see people on every board. I mean, it's actually really fascinating to me. Like, and especially I see, you know, lifelong surfers who, you know, definitely they're not spring chickens and they're not skinny minis, and they're pumping a little shortboard because they just, it's finesse. It's finesse at that point. Like, you know, but I think it is harder when we learn as adults, like that finesse. We kind of missed that 40 years building up to having that finesse, you know. It's like, it's like watching Martha Graham dance at 80. I kind of missed those 60 years, you know, leading up to it to make me look like her at 80.
That's awesome. But hey, how are you popping up though? You pop up fast?
So I rode a shortboard. I for years I rode a fun board for most of my surfing years, which it was about between 7, 10, and 8 feet. And I backed down onto a shortboard a couple of times on like a 6.0 or whatever, like for 6 months or a year or whatever. And then after my daughter was born, I think I had like a 6'10". But now I'm very, very, very dedicated to shortboarding. And I discovered these amazing things, the instructional videos, right? But it's 3 years now that I've been almost exclusively on a shortboard. And I can say finally, 3 years later, it's finally starting to come together. Good years. So it's been hard. And I started this program. It's so cool. It's called Wave Key, KI, Wave Key. It's this guy, Brad Gerlach. And it's kind of like a Tai Chi of surfing kind of thing. And it's this year-long program that you commit to. And he's so cool. He's just so relaxing and calming. And just the way he introduces everything, and he makes you just slow everything down. So I'm working on my backside takeoff. He doesn't call it the pop-up, my backside takeoff.
Oh, nice.
So there's just a forever to learn. And, this program is for advanced surfers too. Like anybody can learn stuff. But yeah, I just love it. I never knew about any of this. I never took lessons. I never knew about instruction. I had some friends give me some tips here and there. So it only hit me about 6 months ago that there's all this information.
Oh, yeah.
So I think it's not about popping up fast. It's about popping up smooth. And definitely doing on land. So for instance, this wave key that I'm taking, like I'm practicing 3 times a day, and the long practices are 21 waves. So if I did that, I'd be popping up 63 times a day on land. And his whole thing is, and it's fun. It's kind of not a cheap program, but it's fun. So I'll do it. When I used to just try to pop up before and make myself practice pop-ups, I just would do like 5 and I'd be like, okay, whatever. So I'll let you know. I'll follow up. I'll let you know. See how
that's where I'm at. I lay in bed and I'm like, okay, get up and do your pop-ups.
Yeah, they're just not. But I highly encourage you to check this out. And it's for shortboarding, but I think it has a longboard.
Oh, that's my goal.
You'd have to look in there because it'll talks about things like, landing with your heel on the rail to tip the board. So you're not going to want to do that after the burst. But I think he's got a program for everyone. Anyways, check it out. It's fun. And you'll find him. He's just super cool guy. All right. Well, we're having fun with tangents. So yeah, I mean, I think we kind of just covered some of this, and maybe it's just, just practice and belief in yourself. But are there any other tips you have for like just practical, real tips, like of what you're going to face as a bigger woman, like, do you have to work on your upper body strength? Like, how would you help people? Any ninja tips you got?
I would say even I'm going to start before like getting yourself ready physically, strength wise and all that is, and anybody, whatever size you are, is when I went out there and I started to surf. I know this is difficult for a lot of people, but you really do have to get out there as much as you can. It's all muscle memory.
Yeah.
And so like, I feel like luckily for me, like I had that opportunity. I worked my own hours and I was chasing the waves, like based on, it didn't matter what hour it was. Cause I'd be like, oh, I'm coming in at 11 today, or back 12 years ago or so, I was lucky to work remote. Mm-hmm. So I would like fly down to Costa Rica and be in the water all the time. And they say, oh, you can stay for as long as you want. My work. I was lucky that way. So I'm going to say, just get out there as much as you can. And now I'm lazy now because I wait till the waves are perfect, which I hate that about myself now. But I sit there and I'm like, oh, it's not that good today, but I should just always get out there. I'm just being lazy. I want to say like, get out there and do it. Now for your body strength and all of that, even the little things make a difference. When I first started training for it, I was doing such the baby exercises, just like sit-ups, push-ups, stretching. So I didn't go to the extreme of like, what is an actual surf workout back in the day. So if they don't, obviously you can go on to online and search any of those, like the one you're doing too. And there's another woman who's been great in New Zealand, and she does mobility because as you get older, and now we didn't touch on that, I'm older as well. Now I'm 54. So I need to keep my muscles flexible and strong. So your weight training to keep them strong, keeping the stretching going as well is very important. But as an overweight person, you've got to get your muscles strong and flexible. That's key.
That's awesome. Sure. Yeah, that's awesome. And I love just the idea of starting with something. I just think, some people are great at jumping in and just a full commitment. But, like you said, the baby workouts, like just get your body moving.
Yeah.
Just get your body moving, strengthening it, get into your body, feel your body, no matter, where you're at. And, it's the same for, any fitness level too, is getting, connected in your body.
Just get yourself started.
But definitely some people I think they can just like, they ever not doing anything, but let's learn how to surf, So that's a good path to injury and frustration. So I love that.
For
So I
sure.
want to go to a thing that we talked about, that a very personal piece that we talked about. And to sort of preface this was, you have been very comfortable with high adrenaline. You had incredible drive. You rocketed to, competitive levels. We'll backtrack and talk about some of the adrenaline things that you've done, like jumping out of helicopters to go snowboarding. Or maybe we can segue into that. But we also talked about that you are realizing that a lot of this ability to focus in this hyper intensive way is attributed to, like, what's
But
your discovery?
yeah. So this is the first time ever I've said it on any interview that I've had, and I've had a bunch in regard to my competitive career, is I have bipolar disorder. And that, looking back at how I was and what I do, I had no fear. I didn't have any fear. I had a hyper focused. What happens is with that is I get hyper focused on something, and if I want to do that, I'm gonna do it. It doesn't matter what. So it's sort of like, think of a freight train and moving forward. I have this idea and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be a surfer. That doesn't mean I'm going to go out one time a week. Like, I get out there and I am out there. I was out there 5 times a week, 6 times a week when I first wanted to do it. So it's like a lot of business owners have bipolar disorder, because we do have this drive and ambition that we're going to do this thing, and we kind of, sometimes you push other things aside and you just go straight for it like a freight train. And I do feel like definitely that had a lot to do with when I first started, how I got to where I was, because I was nonstop. And another thing with it is we have heightened energy, so the heightened energy may allow me to, like, is go, 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 go. I mean, the downside of that is, yes, we would have downsides, which would be, you have a long period of energy, could be 2 weeks of energy, and then you have a down period that you're recouping from, basically not getting much rest, going.
And how did you manage that at the time? How did you manage those downtimes at the time?
So I did find out about it, and before I did start surfing. So it was in 2000 I found out about it, and I was medicated. But at the time I started surfing, I stopped taking my medicine, but not realizing that how it would affect me. I just thought, oh, I'm fine. A lot of people go off their medicine that have bipolar disorder because they miss that heightened experience of it's like happiness, joy, and exciting, and that's what it's like. In a lot of people purposely go off of it because they miss that. They don't like to be. It's not like a sedation. It's more like a normalcy, if you want to call it.
So you're taking this super, super high, like the best wave you ever rode, but now you can only ride a 2-foot wave. Like, it's still a wave, but I mean, that's kind of intense. And that's kind of what we were talking about, that I wanted, and thank you so much for talking about this, because I know it's going to speak to people. But now you're kind of dealing with this feeling of meh, like exactly. So, and maybe, like not having the motivation to go out no matter what. So what's changed for you? Did you start medication again, or did you?
I did. And it does definitely, it grounds me, and it makes me a little less, I have more fear to go out into something.
Wow.
Which is not a normal feeling for me. And I'm trying to figure that out. Is it because I'm older now? Is it because of that? Is it because of the medicine? Or just because I'm being a more cautious older woman now? I mean, but I'm hearing about a lot of women are starting at my age, you know, like they're starting surfing at my age. I'd love to hear from them to see how they're doing. And I do actually hear from them a lot, and I actually coach them, and they'll say, oh my gosh, I'm out there and sometimes I just won't commit to the wave. And
Mhm.
I will like coach them on things that I'm like, I'm going out and paddling out in smaller waves now, but I know what they're feeling because that's what I used to feel. So I give them like tips, and I'll say, in order to commit to that wave, you have to say to yourself and have confidence in yourself, I've done this before. I've done this
Mm.
before. I can do it. And then just commit to it because you're telling yourself, I did it. I can do this. And another thing I used to do is when I was out in the waves and I would say I was competing in Mexico or Costa Rica or something, and I would be scared because these waves are so big coming at me, the set's coming in, and I'm like, oh my God. I would say, okay, relax your muscles, Stacey, and breathe, because just think you're in your home break. Okay.
Mm.
And that's the same thing as I've done this before. I know it because but I feel like those things right now to me, what I have a challenge with right now is paddling out into big waves. Once I'm out there, I'd probably be fine, but getting caught on the inside, I just don't want to do it anymore.
So first of all, what do you consider big at this time in your life?
All right.
Like,
So
where is it intimidating?
like you said, there's different ways. Like, so I like riding point breaks because I can paddle out in the point break it's easier because you go around the whitewater and you
Right.
don't have to go through the whitewater. The whitewater to me is the most exhausting thing and tiring. I remember I'm a stand-up paddle surfer, so let's talk stand-up paddle surfing for a second. Is what I'm best at when I'm out in big waves. So like, and I'll tell you what big is to me. So going up over the whitewater, there's a break near me now that I have to go up over 8 rows of whitewater some days. Just think of, if I miss one, I'm standing up on the board. If I
Right.
miss one of those, which is likely because most people do, even when you're competing, people miss it. It's so much energy that you
Oh
have to.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're caught on the inside, and then you're like trying to get back up on the board and get up standing on the board
Right.
to go up over the whitewater. So I'll just tell you, like, whitewater is the most scary thing for me. So I'll just say that. Not scary, but I don't want to put in that energy if I'm going to get caught on the inside for a long
Yeah.
time. So if it's a point break and it's easy to get out there, then I'm fine with whatever wave it is. If it's a clean day.
Right.
If it's a clean, easy wave coming in, I'm fine with that. Now I could still be fine on like an 8-foot wave at that, like at a right point break. I know usually they're at about, like, I'd say 5 feet, like
Mhm.
5, 4, 3, because I can still ride this right point break easy here. Now, so for me, you're asking like what one would be discouraging to me would probably be, on a day in Costa Rica, if it says 3 feet, it's usually like a hard 6-foot wave. Like,
Mhm.
and could I ride that 6-foot wave? Yeah, no problem. But does that heavy whitewater coming in with that? Am I scared
Mhm.
to do that? Yeah, probably. So I like to go out when it's more like a 2. It says 2 to 3, like even 2, and the 2 is more like a 3.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well,
I
that's
like
really
to do
interesting
that.
talking about going out over the whitewater on a stand-up board because,
Mm.
where I've mostly seen it, because here in Kona, it's reef break. So there's some point break, but it's reef break. So there's usually channels, like, or at
Yeah.
least momentary channels. Like, I know what you're talking about, which is
Yeah.
walls of whitewater coming at
Beach
you.
break. Yeah.
Yes. And big beach break with relatively even coastline so that there's very little window. So that's really intimidating to me to think about trying to have to bust
But I
through
should
those.
do it. I
Yeah.
should do it because I can do it.
So it's
But
timing, right? You just got to get the timing just right.
oh,
Okay. To get
yeah.
you to
But
punch your board through while
oh
standing up.
my.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I'll just give you a little hail. I am so bad at that my daughter and the young girls here, and they take their longboards and they just have this technique where they just lean back and just jump over the whitewater. And this is not what happens
Okay.
to me when I try that. When I try that, I just go,
Oh.
ah. So I have to turtle when I ride, and the
Oh.
turtling is so tiring. So
It is.
on an SUP, do you turtle or suppose, so when you get caught on the
No.
whitewater, what do you do?
Yeah, so like you do have to be up on top of the board. You can never turtle roll it. You can't have the, it's way too big for that. So you just have to get back on your board. Sometimes like if I get right back on it, I might do my knees for a little bit, but if I was competing, I could only do like 5 strokes on my knees. Like you have to do, or you get points deducted.
Oh,
So,
interesting. Okay.
and I don't know, like, yeah. So what you need to do is, you get back on, you're standing up. So there's techniques, and I teach the techniques too on how do you get over. Now these are white waters, could be 3 feet high. White water
Right.
itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have to get up over that white water. So I go into a side stance, like a surf stance, because in paddleboarding we paddle with our feet straight because that's more
Right.
power for us. If I'm going to pop up over the wave, I step back. And then I pop up over like a pop a wheelie almost like, and then just like what you saw the girls doing, doing. You go back and then you're up and then you push forward to go through it. So I use the paddle when I'm in the white, like I use the white water. You have to be paddling when you're in that. If not, you're going to get like pushed back off.
Yeah.
There's a technique to it. Technique to it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that's cool to hear about it.
And then you just keep paddling really hard because the next one's coming.
Right. Speed is your friend, I'm sure, no matter what.
So there's no lull at this break near me right now. There's no lull because there's 3 swells coming in. So you don't have this nice long lull. And that's what I used to have in Boston. Remember I told you there was 1 swell coming in? It'd be like, oh, here's the lull in between the sets. Oh, yay.
No,
I don't always get that.
That's more like Humboldt. Yeah, no lulls. I mean, I didn't know what that was until, at least where I learned, until
I like lulls.
And I remember right after I started, after I'd been surfing, I think 3 or 4 months, and I started at Humboldt, and then I went down to Costa Rica, and it was intense. There were a lot of amazing experiences, but the main thing I remember thinking is like, what's missing? What's missing? What's missing? Oh, fear of death. Because I always thought I was just going to die. Like I didn't care because I was in this crazy part of my life. So Humboldt County, the water's like 48 degrees. There's great whites. You're just getting pounded into the sand or dragged into the rocks like all the time. And then a lot of closeout. So I'd go off on this giant 8-foot face, come barreling down like it was really fun, fall off, get completely wiped out, and then get dragged, in and held down. And so that's what I thought surfing was. So
oh my God.
When I first went and I was in like warm water waves and whatever, I'm like, what's missing? What's missing? Oh, fear of death. That's what's missing. Not that you can definitely, there's heavy waves in Costa Rica, it could totally be very hairy, but yeah, I just remember that feeling.
I totally know what you mean.
Of just being, and then, them coming and coming and coming and coming and coming. And there's no, they don't stop. There's no relief.
But totally isn't that the best way to learn? The best way to learn is like in the hardest conditions, just like
it's true. Cause then everything else. Yeah. I remember when I moved down to LA after my first year, and it's not like I was a great surfer or anything, but I was fearless at the time. And I went out a county line and it was probably 1.5 which I honestly didn't think was that big. So I just because I had been surfing these crazy waves. So, and I just remember like paddling and just taking off. And these guys on shore like, whoa, you were charging. I'm like, oh, really? Like, is that a big wave? Like now though, I have a lot of fear. So it's totally different now. Just I got older, and then having a child, and
me too.
Reef break will really do that to you too. Like when you get pounded into the rocks and cut. So anyways, I know it's so crazy. We're so crazy. We're all crazy, but it's so fun.
No,
so speaking of crazy, actually I want to ask you one quick question before we go into my other big subject. So when you're judging, I'm just curious, when you're in the judging room, do the judges talk to each other? Or do you just make your mark?
Only after the mark, if there's a question. Yeah. Okay. Like it's you're because the thing is my score, my range might be different from someone else's range.
Mm-hmm.
And they might even after the fact, it might be a question of something, but not like during while you're marking.
Okay. I always wondered, and I don't know what it's like in the WSL, but if they're, just like, okay. So the idea is you get your mark down and then you talk about it afterwards. Okay.
Yeah. And it's only if there's an issue. So there's the judges, And then there's a higher up judge that if you had a question, you'd really just ask that higher up judge. You'd
Oh,
say
interesting.
like,
Okay.
yeah, like, so you really just, because everybody's like, say the first person out there is like almost a 10, and all three, maybe three, most of the times I had three judges, but if everybody was judging and that 10, we want to leave leeway for if something else happens and someone else gets, whoa, what if this is one little bit better? So that would be like a 9-8 or something instead of a 10. And then if someone else might leave a little bit more leeway, so their highest might be like a 9.2, right? I might put a 9.8 on that, because I might think, wow, there's not much space to get. But we don't really talk about that.
Okay. No, that's cool. I just thought that was my gossipy question. So we're handling the big topics today. So we've got big topics about being a woman, because, first of all, bipolar is not something that's talked about a lot. And then, you and I chatted about this briefly, menopause. Woo!
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
And how our bodies are changing and how we're dealing with that, because, there's a big window for women from perimenopause, to the process of menopause, to postmenopause. Wow. There's so many different changes we go through, and both physically and mentally. And one of the things I would talk about is, for sure, overall, as a woman, as a person, I care a lot less about what people think. I'm definitely way more grounded in that. I'm also a little grouchier about other people. Like I could see myself becoming one of those women that just wants to whack people over with a cane. Like I could just totally see that part. And it's not even because I've always been like a people pleaser and like really nice and, all this kind of thing. So it's interesting to watch that come. I just feel way more in my body. But all of that said, during the process of it for me, as it's really started to kick in, and like the major hot flashes came and the weight gain came and this big middle section came and all of this stuff that, starts happening.
I thought it was just me.
No, exactly. So, and then I like to, like we talked about, because I was always like, I'm never going to do hormones. I'm just going to do it naturally. And then I kind of tried. I had this Young Living Oil Progestins Plus, and I kind of tried that. And another friend of mine told me, try this progesterone cream. So I tried that. And then when I started walking, I was peeing on myself when I was walking. Like weird stuff happened from playing with the hormones. And then if you're going to go to like, one of those, a naturopathic or a functional doctor or whatever, like they're great, but it's really expensive and really out of reach for a lot of women. So I ended up in the end going on hormones, HRT, like, progesterone or estrogen. And it started with this was fun. Started with a suppository. So, so there's a lot of fun. Like, I'm just going to stick this up the vajayjay this morning. Like,
Oh my God.
And it worked. Well, it worked. I think I had to do it every other day or something. And it worked. It took away the hot flashes. It stopped the weight gain.
Really?
It kind of halted it, slowed it. But then it stopped working completely. And then I had to so then I started taking the pills. So I took estrogen. And I'm probably get people saying like, you can do it the natural way, but I'm happy. Nobody adjusts me. I'm happy as I could be. And then they have to give you progesterone to counteract that. But ironically, the other reason I want to talk about it is my female OB and my female doctor were of no use to me. They just were basically like, well, we don't really treat menopause. And if you're, we can kind of treat the symptoms, but if you're not really having that series of symptoms, I couldn't get care. So I kept asking other doctors, and I found it was a male doctor, ironically, who ended up just explaining things really carefully to me. And so for me personally, I'm one woman, and I know a lot of other women who have very different journeys. That is what worked for me, the very traditional HRT. And I talk about it. So hormone replacement therapy.
Oh, okay.
So, and I went through all the thoughts like, well, are you supposed to do that? Are we meant to do that? It's like, well, that's stupid. So, so what I take is estrogen and progesterone. I take it in pill form. My insurance covers it. It costs $16 a month. And it's helped me a great deal. So
Any negatives?
I haven't noticed any,
And how long have you been taking it?
2 years.
Oh my goodness. Like I never like to touch with and mess with nature. Like I always never thought about doing it. And I remember one doctor saying to me, it was just like a doctor I had to see in Costa Rica for getting health insurance. So he was like, "Oh, do you take hormone replacement?" And I was like, no. He goes, "Oh, really?" Like he was so surprised. And then I was like, "Oh, okay. Should I be?" So that's when that was maybe 5 years ago, but I went through menopause at 47. So I'm 54. And it's funny when you were talking about this just now, I thought to myself, oh my God, that's when I stopped competing. At 47.
Interesting.
Yes.
And do you think they were related?
I don't know. Maybe a lot of things happened around that year, but I mean, wow. I don't know if I told you, but my mom passed. Remember, my mom passed.
Oh yeah. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, but I was like, maybe you just mentioned that could have been it. It could have been it. But I've always been overweight, so I didn't notice any weight gain until coming onto me until about a year or two ago, which was at age 52, 53. And then I started noticing more things happening, which are, I have a scale that shows my BMI, my body mass index. So I was like, pushing 30, which after 30 is not a good idea anytime, but I started going up and up and up and up. So like my fat content was going up and my muscle mass was going down. And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing different? Like I wasn't doing anything different.
Right. Exactly. That's what's so weird. And here's the thing. And this is really why I wanted to talk about it for anybody who's like, why are we talking about this on a short podcast? Because it's like your body in a way has always, a woman's body is always changing, right? Like we go through periods, and if you have children, you go through that. So we're kind of used to changes, but you're not used to everything you've ever done not working anymore.
I know, right?
Like that's weird. It's weird when, okay, well, I used to be able to, trim my weight down or feel a certain way by eating a certain way. Oh, I used to be able to build muscle by doing this. And like, oh no, none of that works anymore. And it's where it gets in your head and you start to feel, a lot of different things, you may not feel as juicy, and I mean that on a soul level too, not just on a, personal level. But it's just that it feels different, and chemically you feel different. You might feel less edge, like that might have been part of it for you. Like there's that you kind of don't have drive in the same way, but at the same time you have all this kind of clarity. You forget words, or I don't know if that happened to you.
Well, actually, I don't. So one of the things that happened with me is I forget words, but I don't know if it's attributed to that because I actually became disabled from 2 concussions. Like I had 2 concussions back to back, and it affected me. Like it's affected my life. But I continue to surf and stand up paddle surf. I continue to do that, but the memory thing for me has been an issue. I'm actually going to Boston. I'm getting checked for memory next week.
Oh wow! Oh yeah. All right. Oh well, good luck with that. Yeah, I guess, so that's to bring it back to that piece of maybe the onset of menopause having something to do with, dovetailing together with this drive, with that energy level.
Yeah.
It's just, it's something, I guess I want to just bring it up because it's not spoken about. And we have a lot of different reactions, and we have there's a lot of people telling us what we're supposed to do about it or not do about it, so that's all.
I need to start reading up on it.
I think it's good.
Time, I think.
And just seeing how you feel, like, because again, it's really personal too. But most of my friends have struggled with weight gain, with people who were really thin and gained weight very suddenly. And some of them are totally cool with it or have accepted it, and some of them are not. And, building muscle is way harder,
Yes.
like I had to actually go to a gym, which I don't do, but boy, it was great when I did. So yeah, I guess what I want anybody who might be hearing this and like relate to it all is just whatever you're experiencing is just normal. That's all. And
Exactly. In your
and it's okay to
50s.
listen to it and it's okay to do whatever you need,
And I'd love to say I've been overweight my whole life. So for those people that were thinner and surfing maybe when they were younger, or even maybe they started in their 40s too, but now in their 50s, they're feeling weight gain, and don't be embarrassed to get out there. Don't be embarrassed because you're gaining weight, and if you're feeling a little weaker, you just have to do a little bit more, strengthening, strength training and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's so helpful. So taking that kind of in a way to this new place that you're in, you had mentioned, that getting into longboarding right now was really important to you. And part of it had to do with this sense of, you being, I don't know if it's exactly an outsider, but you being the only one, like the groundbreaker, like all of these different pieces. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Oh, I know. What was the question exactly though about it?
Oh, I think my question was, let's see, why is it so important to you? Like you recently started longboarding. Why is this so important for you?
I've never had a problem being the outsider. I've never had a problem. I don't worry what other people are thinking, but sometimes, so for example, I just want to say in the past, what I was like, all my friends who were surfing, they, in 2012, I think it was, they're like, let's go to this surf camp. And this surf camp was like surf, 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 not stand-up paddle surf. It's very well known camp. And I was like, oh, let's all just go together down on a trip. No, we want to go to the camp. And I was like, oh, I ride a stand-up paddle surfboard. I'm an outsider, right? Mm-hmm. But it never restricted me from doing what I wanted to do. I rode waves with all the other people. I would bring my board up heavy rocks in New England when we would go find a new break or something. So this time when we went to the surf camp, I took my measures I needed to take, and my measures I needed to take were calling that surf camp and saying, hey, I'm bringing my SUP surfboard. Stand-up paddle is SUP surfboard. Is that okay? Oh yeah, sure, no problem. Well, this is the receptionist, but I was reading and I knew from the industry that they were putting out stickers saying no stand-up paddleboarding, like stickers, right?
Wow.
This particular camp, right? And I'm not going to say who it was, but so I'm like, this receptionist, maybe she doesn't know. Maybe she's just saying, yeah, just come. So I called the managers and the owner. I think I might have even talked to the owner. And I was like, I just want to make sure I'm okay coming down there and being in the camp. Oh yeah, no problem. And when I went, it was amazing. The guys that were our coaches, they saw me stand up paddleboarding and they were in awe. Because when they first put the board onto the boat or onto the buses, they're like, oh my God, what is this thing? And then they see me taking a wave, and this guy, I still know him to this day. This was in 2012. He comes up to me and he goes, oh my God, that was awesome.
Oh, cute.
They're like, they had no idea what you can do on it. And then these guys who are really good surfers, they tried the board, and they can surf anything. They can surf anything. I want to be able to surf anything.
Right.
That's what I want to be. I don't want to be limited to just one thing. And I don't think it's because I want a challenge in my life, because I don't. I think it's because I don't want the challenge anymore. And my challenge for me is that's a big board to lug around, and I have to lug around my paddle. And it's just a different concept of getting out to the whitewater. So I really want to, I want to be one of the the in crowd now. No.
Right. Exactly. I totally get it.
I think that's it. I want to be able to just ride anything and be anywhere, and it's hard to get a rental board for me. If I go to Hawaii, so when I went up to, California and I was renting a board, I can't get my SUP surfboard that I like, or even at all, so I also want that flexibility to do that, so, and I teach it. I teach longboard longboard surfing, and I coach it, and so I want to be able to do it. And that's where I'm at now. And am I in the beginning, and am I a beginner in it? Yes. I am still in the whitewater. I feel like it's hard for me to pop up because I'm so big. And that's probably like you were asking me at the beginning, why did I go to stand-up paddle surfing? Probably because like I didn't pop up on that and I saw something else. I'm like, oh, I'll just do this. So yeah, I hope to be able to do what I can do. I mean, right now, where I coach surfing is I stay with all the women in the whitewater because that's just my forte. But I want to be able to get out into the greens on a surfboard. I would love to do a shortboard, but like that's another like whole probably 100 pounds, lose 80 pounds.
It's another animal, that's for sure. They're all well,
so
you can get one with a, like really wide nose and like lots of flotation, but then it's just the journey of learning how to develop speed. It's it's a different piece. But the thing about a shortboard, I mean, think about this, is you can duck dive. And that changes your life.
That's what I want to do.
Like that changes your life. And you can have a pretty good size shortboard, like 6'8", with a lot of foam and be able to duck dive it. So I don't know, with your athleticism and what you've done before, I would actually talk to somebody about that.
There we go.
Because even if it's super frustrating right at first, like you may find like, you know what, it's not really any harder for me to pop up on this thing. And I can, and you're going to know how to, to surf.
Just grab one and go out there. That's what I should just do.
Well,
grab one and see which ones I can duck dive. Then that's what I should do.
Well, yeah.
I teach that.
And you know how to surf already. So it's like, you know how to surf. So if you just had like a shortboard with some volume, get some leaders in there. That's what I think. All right. So that's my opinion, and hey, and if it's just boo, then that's fine. But
that's what we're going to do. I'm going to do it.
I mean, I'm so lazy about going out on my 8-foot board now for the same reason. I'm just like, I have to deal with all that whitewater, So I guess we just get to a point. So it's somewhere in between. Like you have to have more foam because it's harder to catch waves and it's tiring. And the paddling is different because you're in a more arched position and you're like, there's a whole other thing. But I think it'd be fun for you to check it out. Let's see what you think.
I might do that.
So what is your favorite place that you've ever surfed?
Oh, wow. That's so tough to say. I would call it like more like thinking of some of my favorite waves I took rather than my favorite place.
Okay.
Like, is that cool? Or you want me to say?
Yeah, just say your favorite. I mean, if you have one favorite wave or memory, that's awesome. But if you want to just talk about some favorite waves, I just love wave stories.
Yeah, like there's this place that here now this particular place that I've paddled out to is a right point break really far out. A point break really far out. And you know what? That's when my sup surfboard is awesome because I paddle out from the beach all the way out to the point, which might take me like, 10 minutes maybe to get out. Yeah, like so a surfer doesn't go.
Yeah.
They get dropped off by boats maybe.
Yeah.
So, which one time happened when I was out there, there was a boat that dropped some people off, but you can't paddle from the beach out to it. So, this particular one is a reef point break. And when I like the reef breaks because it sucks back, a lot, but you got to hurry up and like get on it fast and whatever. But this one, I had both my favorite wave and I had both my most scariest waves.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah. So, and I would, I haven't gone out to it in a long time, but I would love to do it again because I do feel comfortable at point breaks just because if you do like you end up on the inside, it's easier to get out of them.
Yeah.
But they're faster and they're faster. And if there's a crowd there, it's harder to get into it. But I know most of the people at the break. So this one I took, it was like it was a big, this is probably one of my biggest waves. So I feel like it was like, that one where I was saying it was like almost a 10-foot wave and some guys like, oh, that's not big, I
think it's big. Yeah.
Oh, well, it'll still always be big to me.
Yeah.
So 10-ish. And, so that day I had like my funnest wave. I like it. I love the big high drop in.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite things, like just dropping in and like doing a bottom turn. And I'm not like the greatest, like huge cutbacks or anything, but I just love, dropping in. So that was like my funnest day over there. And it was, forgiving too once you got on it, which is
Right,
great.
right. If you make it, yeah.
Yeah. And then the day that I took the drop, and then after I was like cutting back, and then this one, I ended up not popping back up over the wave. I think that I got caught on the inside. And when I did, I got pounded really far down.
Ooh.
I hit the reef, but not too bad, just on my foot. So that wasn't the bad part. The part that was scary to me, and it was the only scary part I remember from surfing, was I didn't know which way was up, and I just I really didn't think I was going to make it to my breath up.
Wow.
And that day I said to my mom, I said to my kids and my mom, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then, oh my God, today is my day. So
wow.
but I made it. I made it up.
Wow.
And then people that were there that day after we got out, they're like, "Are you okay, Stacey?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay." But that was my only close call in 12 years, really. I've been with other girls like that. I was surfing another break with them, and they pretty much got water in their inside, like got water in their lungs almost. And that day I didn't, nothing happened to me. Like, so
it was just I remember being severely humbled in some big conditions, because I hadn't really paid any consequences yet. And I was used to it being pretty large. And I went out in conditions I absolutely had no business being out in. I'm not saying that was your story, but
good for you.
it was, well, what happened is it's a place, it's called the North Jetty in Humboldt, where the swell comes in, it can get really big, but there's a channel, like a conveyor belt. So right next to the jetty, it just pulls you right out. So, which is great in terms of getting through the channel. But what I didn't realize is, as the sets were building, I was watching these huge sets and going like, oh, it's so cool. And just thinking I could catch an insider. And I hadn't been surfing very long. And I'm like watching. And I don't realize that I've been actually pulled out, and I'm actually out where the sets are coming. And then like a big sneaker set came, and it was just this giant wave, and it just drilled me down to the bottom. And then I didn't even know the trick then, that you turn your board towards the shore and just whatever you can try and go in. But then I got pulled out further, and another one came. And so I just had repeated hold downs. And I realized, I'm like, oh, I see the problem, because I hadn't been scared of big waves before. And I'm like, it's oxygen. Oxygen is the problem, the lack of oxygen. So that is a very scary feeling. And so I remember that, being upside down, not knowing where I was, not moving. And my board had tombstoned. So I was like, it was creepy. So I hear you on that.
Oh my gosh. Like the thing you just reminded me of is something good to work on, is like our holding our breath too. So breathing.
That is a really good thing. I should really do that. And even if you do the breath, like someone taught me for free diving, if you just even simply take 5 deep breaths before you go out, you get more oxygenated, and it's very calming anyways. Like there's a whole people that are taking all classes on breath work and stuff, but even just doing that simple part.
Yeah, exactly.
So I like to ask this of people: what is your favorite part of your surfing?
I like being one with the ocean. I love to be going out there, and just, it's like a meditation to me. It could be even on days where I only maybe caught one wave. Now I'm okay with that. Back in the day, I might not have, because I never did only one wave. But now sometimes I go out, and I went out, for example, in California, and I had this is another thing what's held me back, a lot of things, and I'm trying to figure out what has held me back a little bit. But I had rotator cuff injury. And that's been going on for about 3 years, but I didn't know it. I just thought it was when I switched over to learn in 2020. So it's been just before 2020. But in 2020, I started longboard surfing a little bit more, and that my arm started hurting. It was my left arm, but I thought it was, it's just because I'm doing a new type of paddling and not stand-up paddle surfing. And I just let it go, and I was hurting till the point where I told one day when I went out with my friend, we went out to paddle out, and I was like, I can barely lift my arm, but I wanted to surf so bad. Like, she was visiting, and I went out, and it was a heavy day, so I didn't have to I didn't have to barely paddle into the wave itself, but paddling back out, I was like, it was hurting so bad that I went and I got it checked and like, oh, you have a torn ligament, or whatever it is, a torn tendon.
Oh,
and
geez.
you have you have 3 have tendonitis. So like 4 of my tendons were,
Oh, yeah.
So now I'm finally getting that back. But even why I brought that up is because even when I did go out there and I could only catch one wave, or I wasn't able to like even barely lift my arm, I liked being out there in the ocean with the waves and feeling one with the ocean. And I do feel like when I take a wave, it's like a connection for me.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that answer.
Yeah, it's a connection. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so what are you working on? Is there something specific? I mean, there's always lots of things surfers are working on, but is there something specific you're working on right now?
Yeah, as we mentioned on the longboard surfing, what I would like to do is, I want to work on my pop-up more. So I'm working on that. And I want to work at getting out there more often than not, because I live beachfront.
Yeah.
and and everybody be like, what the heck? Why don't you go out every day? Now, so that is my goals right now, are really just to be on the water more often than, like I used to be. Remember, like 5 days a week, I used to be out there, and that's what I want to do.
It sounds like it's just that reconnecting, just if you think of it as like connecting with that happy place, more than having to, because it's an adjustment going from the drive of, I mean, obviously it came from joy, but the drive of competing, the drive of improving, we always are improving, like, because you can't help but not think, oh, I wish, or that wave was so good. And then like the next one, you're like, if my foot had just been in this position, it would have been this. But that place, I remember it started to get really crowded here and I started to lose my joy. And I actually just started like snorkeling for a while. And just getting in the water. And then, it was just so easy and I wasn't jockeying with people. And then slowly, the stoke just kind of came back and I got all fired up again. Now I have to watch it because I get so cranky because to me, it's a meditation too. And so when a bunch of people are like then moving in, I have to breathe and not be that crotchety old lady. I'm like, well, I'm like grouchy auntie now in the water, like.
Oh, and just try to ignore them, because I remember that used to be like in New England. I have, in a lot of times here where I live, in front of my house, nobody goes. It's not a great wave. That's why nobody goes there. But I ride it when it's like, just for practicing pop-up in the whitewater. So I'll there's nobody out there. Sometimes it's scary, like being in the ocean by yourself, because you shouldn't be. But there's enough people like walking by. But if something happened, but sometimes it's just me, and I love that.
I love that too. Oh my gosh, I love that. I went out really early the other morning, and I was out when it was still pretty much dark, and I don't do that often. And it was small enough that I didn't feel really unsafe, but it was just so amazing being there completely by myself in the quiet. As the light started to come, I couldn't catch a wave, but that didn't matter again. Like I finally could, but the water was so flat and inky. It was like hard to figure out where to paddle. But it's just such an incredible gift to live where we live and be able to do this. So last question. Thank you for spending all this time. You've had this whole identity and this whole thing. So what do you know what the next step is for you?
Well, as my kids told me again, they tell me all the right things. They said, for those who can't do, teach.
See, but I have a bone to I actually believe teaching is I don't like to have teachers just in that, but totally. I mean,
but I've been doing it for so long, but I have been teaching for 12 years too. And I do enjoy that, but I just talked to one of the other instructors with me. And it's hard for us because I think that's what happened to me, to be honest, is that I started teaching it more than doing it.
Right.
And I do want to incorporate what we just talked about, is myself getting back out into the water but also I love spreading the stoke. Like all my knowledge that I've learned, I do a lot of women's camps, and in the women's camps, or I do a lot of online webinars too, and relaying my knowledge to people. I love it because I didn't have that when I started. I was self-taught too, and you get beat up and all that, like, so I teach like how not to get beat up and how to learn how to read surf reports and how to surf etiquette. I teach surf etiquette.
Surf etiquette. That's much needed right now.
And it's my
humility.
I really want to do that. Yes. Yeah.
It'd be cool. I don't know if you already do this, but if you don't already do like online classes for etiquette and surf reports. Yeah. If you have links or anything, make sure you send them to me and I can put them in the show notes, of course. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for spending all this time. It was really, really fun learning about your journey. And thank you for sharing so much of yourself. Because we're really just women out there doing our thing, and it's got its own challenges. And I'll need to talk to a younger woman about what it's like to deal with being on your period and all that stuff. I don't miss that part. Like, that's
either. Hello.
That's all. Like, don't have to deal with is a shark coming near me or any of that because of that. So anyway,
it's great to be in your 50s. I love being in my 50s.
It's really great. I do too. So, well, have a wonderful night. Pura vida.
You too. Pura vida.
I'll talk to you soon. See if you'll hopefully see you out in the water sometime.
Yay. Great.